Plated Traditions Channel. Welcome to the Plated Traditions Channel with your host Kendra Moses. This is the Plated Traditions.
Hello and welcome to the Plated Traditions Channel. My name is Kendra Moses, and as always, with our resident chef Kai off camera. So today we're going to be discussing Mother's Day. The thing about Mother's Day is I know that it can be quite a sensitive topic, and I want to kind of cover that sensitivity a little bit. When it comes to holidays like Mother's Day, this is quite an important thing to focus on, because we're not just talking about any angst or any type of mild disagreements anyone might be having with their mother because their mother didn't agree with them or something, or their mother didn't buy them something that they wanted at the store or what have you. In the uncertain world around us, we find ourselves with things that are definite and a few things that just kind of spring up on us in our day-to-day lives. And these things have everything to do with how the rest of our day-to-day lives will be. A lot of times these things will have a lot to do with our traditions. It will have an effect on such a mass scale, or such a personable one, that it seems like a mass scale because it's branching out to different holidays like Mother's Day. So we have all these skirmishes around the world, and we have all these day-to-day events happening where we know that immortality is not a human trait. And we have people who have parted this world under relatively expected circumstances, peaceful circumstances. But the thing is, we as human beings, no matter how much we affect the world around us or how much we think we affect the world around us, there's usually someone or something left behind that still has a piece of us. And so while we might not be wrapped up into an actual tradition or an actual holiday in which we're given the full credit for these things coming to be, we are definitely a part of it, regardless of how much we think it is so, how much a society thinks it's so. If you have one person left behind who remembers you and has that feeling of remembering you, and has that effect that feeling has left behind, that's when we start to see the importance of such notifications for holidays like Mother's Day. For any woman who chooses to become a mother and has led that path in their life as a mother, they are most likely, as they have left this world, they are most likely leaving behind a child, a person who they've cared for. And hopefully it has been reciprocal. You have a child who cares for them as much as they cared for them, as the mother has cared for them. That effect is long-standing, and it depends on the child about how a day like today will affect them. Now, it's not to say that it will be like all doom and gloom, it would be a depressing thing, but it will have probably some somber tone, even though they have a mother who they know will be totally against them not being just themselves, not being happy, not being as content as they could possibly be, despite them not being here with them. And with the world going on the way that it is now with the big time skirmishes, and I'm not trying to get into a world debate, but it's unavoidable. It would be remiss of me to sit here and talk about the importance of traditions, plated or otherwise. And I sit here and I blabber on about a half an hour episode and talking about traditions and talking about history. And it would be remiss of me to say that I could just avoid parts of what's going on in the world now because they're not pleasant, because they're not picturesque, they're not the things that we want to put in our Plated Traditions journal as a memory. Because even though that may not be the case, these are things that are always affecting us on a personable level. And I can't ask you to always think introspectively and try to avoid such topics. They have to be mentioned because these are the things that affect the world around us, especially when we think about the month of May. Now, the month of May in the United States is Military Appreciation Month. So this whole month is supposed to be a nod to our civil servants who served in any branch of our armed forces. When we think about our armed forces and they're out there and they're seeking to obtain a rendition of peace, some form of peace. And their actions, irregardless of any Purple Hearts or badges of any source, any ranking, their whole premise of being and serving is to have a lasting effect on our day-to-day lives. And a lot of what happens and the type of actions they have to take has a lot to do with ends up becoming our history, and thus affecting our civilizations, and thus in turn affecting things like our traditions, which then in turn start to affect us. So it's an old Latin proverb, si vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. And it's a very strong statement. But it's a very strong statement that a lot of people have taken to heart. I know that's how our world works. And being that that's how our world works, that is something else that in turn affects even modest holidays like Mother's Day. Because we are now dealing with a possible person going through Mother's Day with a parent who had a rather normal or natural parting from this world, and thus they're not here to celebrate with them hand in hand. But we also have our situations where they're on a more global spect, where that Latin proverb has come up so often that these are not natural partings, and these partings include people, children of all ages. There's no one really to be spared. And so it's very difficult to look at someone's face and with so much jubilance, and to try to at least push that jubilance that you have on a day like this, because you've been fortunate enough to have had that time with your parents, or still have that time with your parents in a more peaceful manner. Not in a manner in which you were told that your mother is not here anymore for the sake of peace. It's a very tricky terminology and verbiage you will have to use to comfort a person in this time of year or this form of holiday when that's what the person is going through. So I'm not going to stay too much on this, but anyone who's watching, I understand. And I didn't want to sit here and try to make a flowery video in which that's all I talk about is, oh, aren't mothers great? Isn't it just great? The whole world great, great, great. I know it's not the case. And it's hard to ignore these things happening, especially when we have a whole world around us, each going through our separate individual trials in life. And a holiday doesn't necessarily just make it okay. And I realized that sometimes a holiday, as celebratory as it's meant to be, can actually cause it to be a bit more trying. And I just want any of you who are experiencing that to realize that at the very least, we here at Play Traditions understand that. As far as sympathy, we just want to give our condolences to anyone out there and to let you know that we understand and that we acknowledge you, regardless of the circumstance. Like I said, it doesn't have to be all gore, but if you had someone, a mother, on this Mother's Day that you cared for who's no longer with you, we want to give our condolences and honor your mother's memory, as well as I hope you're able to honor your mother's memory, despite any of the feelings that may be attached to her no longer being with you. To continue with Mother's Day in a different light now. When I talk to you during the various holidays, I know it's becoming a trend of me saying you can't really dictate the date. You can't really say when is the right time or the good time to celebrate a holiday. Now, Mother's Day is a very ancient holiday. As so many other things, we credit all the way back to the times of the ancient Greeks and Romans. And so in that case, they were honoring their gods and goddesses, rather, more specifically their goddesses, and those maternal figures that meant something to their history, their culture, their tradition. Everyone has a different history, as I mentioned during our Easter special. I know during our Easter special, I mentioned so many things. And so, but that brings me squarely to the point that I'm trying to make right now. So in the UK around the 16th century, their Mother's Day is actually referred to as Mothering Sunday. Now, Mothering Sunday, very old tradition, like I said, around the 16th century. And it was referred to as Mothering Sunday because this was the time where people would revisit the church they were baptized in the fourth Sunday of Lent. It took that connotation and of visiting your mother church, the place that you're from, the place where you basically, I guess, became born in a sense. That's ideally kind of the spiritual interpretation of a baptism, almost like a rebirth. So when we think about the place, this church that has actually done this for you, and you'd be remiss to not also mention the actual mother who brought you into this world and brought you to that church in order to be baptized. So they kept the tradition going in which their Mothering Sunday is similar to our Mother's Day. However, it happens on a different time. So as I said, it's the fourth Sunday of Lent. It changes its date, much like Easter does and our other celestial style holidays. And so theirs this year was March the 30th. And so that's why I said we can't get too bogged down on a right or wrong time, because being that our histories are different, being that the traditions and our holidays spring from different reasonings and different histories, we can't just be so critical of saying that, oh, they did that way too early, because there can be a flip side as that as well. See, in order to have the proper etiquette, we have to keep an open mind about all the world around us. Because the thing is, someone in the UK could say we're just as flawed if we want to go that route, which we don't. But someone easily from the UK could say, so those poor American mothers, their children just go along and not acknowledge Mother's Day whatsoever. I said that could easily happen because their day happened on March the 30th. Now, when I was referring to holidays and I referred to March the 30th, I was referring to the end of Ramadan. We all have our different histories, and so we can't get bogged down by the time frames. The thing is, in order to hold on to our traditions and what means something to us, is that we know where they come from and why they mean something. And that is why they mean something. That Mother's Day, their Mother's Day, means something to them on that day, March the 30th for this year, because it was the fourth Sunday of Lent. And this is how they honored the old tradition of visiting your mother church, the church in which you were baptized in. And then it's even more difficult to question something when we think about it officially. Us in the United States, our Mother's Day is only about 111 years old. So if you think about the other civilizations, the other histories, ancient Rome and Greek times, they had this form of holiday for honoring their maternal goddesses. anyone from that neck of the woods, even now, even though so much time has gone by, their history of Mother's Day is much longer than ours. I mean, ours seemed like a little squirt, like a newborn in comparison to theirs. Even if we think about the UK's Mothering Sunday, we're talking about the 16th century. So we can't possibly think that we know any better, because our Mother's Day, our official Mother's Day holiday, didn't get written into our history until 1914. There was a woman that was given a bulk of the credit for the American Mother's Day. Her name was Anna Jarvis. She was from West Virginia, and after her mother's passing in 1908, she advocated strongly about honoring your mother. It goes far back. We talk about actual documented parts of our history in which we all come to a consensus, even for our little plot of land over here in the United States. That's what we're referring to, the things that finally made it into what we acknowledge now as a long-standing tradition. And so ours seems like a newborn in comparison to probably anybody else's in the world. But for our official Mother's Day history to be officially signed in by our President Woodrow Wilson in 1914, our holiday is but an infant, so to speak, if you want to keep in the flow of Mother's Day. Mother's Day is a tricky thing, not only just because what I referred to at the top of our episode, but also because the definition of a mother is quite intricate, as it's not definitive. In its simplest form, to look up a definition for a mother in a dictionary is a woman who is in relation to her child. See, being a mother in the sense that we actually celebrate the holiday in which that the people actually miss their mothers, or the people want to still celebrate them, period. That definition, it just serves as a regular definition. The definition is not flawed, but as you notice how it doesn't give a definitive explanation of the expectations of a mother or the acts of a mother. These are the reasons that we actually celebrate Mother's Day for any time of year or behind any history. These are the things that comes to light when we start to think about a mother. It's more than a woman who is in relation to her child, because even the aspect of her child may change, because the aspect of her child may mean she's taking on a child that somebody else wasn't ready for. And so that's her child for all intents and purposes. And that's how the child feels, because that's their mother for all intents and purposes. Because we don't just celebrate Mother's Day because someone gave birth to us. We celebrate Mother's Day because, or we want to celebrate Mother's Day because we had that figure in our life who helped us along the way. When you have a child of any origin and it's been taken in, or it's been birthed, or it's been cared for and nurtured, that is what a mother is, at least in regards to why we celebrate this holiday. Because I do know this is not the case for everyone across the board. That's why we choose to celebrate it. And it's not even to poke fun at anyone else who doesn't have that sentiment or feeling. It's that feeling of acknowledging something that means something to you, that person that meant something to you, and that has influenced your life in such a way that you feel reverence that grows into generations, which in turn into things like other cultural experiences, other traditions, and the holidays that for many have been going on for centuries over. Even with us being the official infant holiday here for Mother's Day, it's still over a century years old. It's just something to think about, the true meaning of what it is. Like I said, and it's not something to be quantified by material wealth or some sort of affluence. Don't quantify whether or not a good mother is the mother who could get you a bunch of brand name clothes and shoes, or the good mother who can always make sure that nothing ever goes bad, which it's impossible. You may have a mother who can make it feel like no matter what's happening, how bad something is, that you're going to be taken care of. Things are going to be okay. Parent is just one that tries. That really tries with the sincerity. The same sincerity I talked about. We were talking about etiquette. Where you're doing all you can. You're being the best person you could be. You're acting with all good intention. But life happens. So to say that someone didn't have a good mother, it's because right now they're left with nothing because life happened. Their mother didn't have a trust fund to leave behind. Their mother didn't have a family home to leave behind. So now this child has a more trying way of life. And I only mention this because I believe for anyone who actually had a good parent and influential parent, effectual parent, I don't think this way anyway. But it just bothers me sometimes that these things cross the rest of civilization are usually quantified on a monetary or materialistic basis, in which someone else may think they have the right to dictate to someone else the worth of their parents, because their parent could have left them a bunch of money and material goods. Because the only thing their parent could do was leave them with their love. Because those material goods aren't why celebrate Mother's Day. They're helpful, and it's nice to always have shelter and everything else. It is, and I'm sure it's something that a really intentional parent wants for their child, wants for themselves. And all that is great if you have it and you're able to keep it. But mother carries along in their legacy something much more priceless than that. And so that's why we celebrate Mother's Day. So if you're able to understand a sentiment like that, you understand fully why Mother's Day is an actual holiday. Have you ever noticed that the entities that we seek support and guidance from the most, we refer to as Mother? We revere Gaia, our Mother Earth. We all hail from our motherlands. Then, of course, there's our mothers. The term mother in whatever language seems to be one of the most frequently used words that we call on besides any of our deities or ourselves. Therefore, it's not all that surprising that the concept of celebrating mothers is noted to date all the way back to the days of the ancient Greeks and Romans, with festivals honoring gods like Rhea and Cybele, irregardless of how or when it started. Mom, Okasan, Mutar, Mor, Alem, Ahoya, Mama, Madre, Mura, Mer, Mam, Omani, Tai, Anana, Ona, Maher, Anezi, Muda, Ima, Mara, Ibu, Matari, Matku, Aiti, May, Motana, Mat, Mata, Ima, Matki, Mother. Happy Mother's Day.
What I feel for, yeah, 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 yeah. No one can ever measure. See, I'm a firm believer, much like the ancient Greeks are. You're my cosmic weaver, woven by the fates, yes, beyond my birth, this I can relate. You were there as I stood and waiting, gold star for the years of participating. Even when times got great, but see, that's what I'm saying. When life got something gray and you were always there at the weigh-in. There never was a catch, no final bell at a match. Your love was never detached, that's why. Hey, hey, mama, 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 yeah, I hear, yeah, 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 yeah. I'll go as far, 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 far to personally thank the stars, 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 stars. Because I have, yeah. And don't let my age will alarm ya. It'll never do any harm to ya. Because the longer I know you, in my heart you'll be so through. Father time can't erase you or pull back all we've been through. I'll swear all I ever knew was inspired just from knowing you. Just remember this child's point of view, even when this child's about 92. And sometimes their memories get all skewed. That feeling will be intact, of that mother that kept them on track. Their aura in which you could always interact. Even when it feels like a gentle smack, my memories will find a way to get back. Please, ma, trust that when I do, this feeling of love only gets renewed.
Thank you again for joining us for another week. We hope to see you again next time. Bye bye.